This video will expose the secrets of your subconscious. But how will revealing the mysteries of your mind make you more productive? How will what you discover help with the anxiety you feel? So much is expected of us in today's fast-paced world. But how can we keep up when we keep falling behind? How do we keep moving forward when all we want is to sit still, be present, and have peace of mind? All the answers and more are in this video. And by the time you're done watching, you will never be the same. So let's begin. Productivity or peace. Why do we always have to choose between one or the other? Getting things done can be very rewarding, but why is it only rewarding when it's done? What if getting things done can be rewarding while you get them done? The mind has a natural way of organizing itself to get things done. This video is all about discovering that way. We will also overcome the stumbling blocks we will encounter as we discover the kind of system your mind will trust. This will let you be productive in peace while you get things done. We start with the mental consequences of not having a forethought system and what it has done to your mind. Doing so will be the foundation everything else in this video will be built upon. We now begin with exposing the insidious thing that has been hiding within you. The fog in your mind. Your mind is foggy and you know it. You know it because you feel tired every day, and no amount of rest can change that. The invisible weight pulling you down comes from somewhere deep. This is your brain, divided into the conscious and subconscious. The conscious part of your mind is aware of the rules governing space and time. The subconscious, however, has no regard for such rules. As far as it's concerned, everything is happening right here, right now. But why does this matter? It matters because each time you come up with things to do, but never do them, they move from the conscious part of your mind to the subconscious part of your mind. This creates the fog. You see, the more things get buried in your subconscious, the more it weighs you down and the more tired you feel. But that's not all. It actually gets worse. Your subconscious mind tries to remind you that there's something you haven't done, a task you're yet to complete. This may sound good at first until you remember that the subconscious has no sense of space or time. So even when you're lying in bed at night, it keeps you awake. This is because it wants you to do everything right here, right now, even when it doesn't make any sense to do so. Your subconscious mind can't postpone anything because to it, there is no future. There is only now. It also can't tell that you're not in the right place to do what it's reminding you to do. Because to it, there is no somewhere else. There is only right here. Getting rid of this fog will be the first step to attaining peace in productivity. Luckily, this step is simple, yet underappreciated. You get rid of the fog simply by writing things down. This way, whatever's on your mind never makes it to your subconscious. The mind is for having ideas, not holding them. David Allen, author of Getting Things Done. What follows in the rest of this video builds on this quote and the book it comes from. Clearing the fog is one thing, But there's something else that the fog is hiding. It's what keeps you awake at night and feeling anxious during the day. And it all has to do with space, time, and priority. The anatomy of priority. Priority is based on two things: importance and urgency. On the surface, these two words may seem interchangeable, but they're not. However, the relationship between the two will reveal what the fog is hiding. On screen is something you may have already seen before. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. It has 4 quadrants that aid in prioritizing based on importance and urgency. A quick rundown. Quadrant 1. If it's important, it's of high value. And if it's time sensitive, it's urgent. You respond by doing it. Quadrant 2. Important but not urgent. It's of high value but not time sensitive. You respond by scheduling it. Quadrant 3. Not important but urgent. You respond by delegating. Have someone else take care of it. And quadrant 4. Neither important nor urgent. Delete it. It serves you no purpose. Ideally, as we live our lives, we are supposed to remain in the upper 2 quadrants, where things are important. This is how our conscious mind prioritizes things when space and time are taken into account. Our subconscious, on the other hand, sees everything not as important, but only as urgent. Something is considered urgent when it needs to be taken care of right here, right now. This brings us back to the fog. You see, what the fog in your mind is hiding is an alarm in your head. This alarm makes you anxious every single time it goes off. It leaves you with this feeling of, there is something you should be doing right now, even when you can't think of anything, because it's buried deep, deep in your subconscious. Your conscious mind may have forgotten, but your subconscious hasn't. The good news is this: the anxiety alarm has an off switch, and the secret to turning it off is literally on the back of your hand. Your handy hand. Have you ever wondered why people write things down on their hands? I mean, yes, it's to help remember things, but why the hand? It is because for the subconscious mind to truly let go of information and not sound the anxiety alarm of worry, it needs to know that it can trust whatever it is that's holding that information. So what builds this trust? And why does the mind trust the hand? There are 3 reasons. First of all, when you write something down, it needs to be written somewhere immediately accessible. You may not always have something to write on, but you always have your hands. Secondly, after you've written something down, the written information needs to be easily retrievable. If what you wrote down gets lost, then what gets lost gets forgotten. Nobody forgets where they left their hand, because people have a tendency to be attached to it. And thirdly, you need some sort of a reminder embedded in how you stored the information. Whenever we use our hands, we see what we need to remember, and that reminds us of what we need to do. These 3 things, accessibility, retrievability, and reminders, are going to bring you peace while you get things done, and also keep the anxiety alarm in your head switched off. We can't, however, write everything on our hands. We only have 2 of them. But what if we also had 2 brains, a second one, to give our hand a hand? What follows are the steps to doing just that. The external brain. This second brain outside your skull will be your forethought system. And it all starts with getting things out of your head. Think of anything readily accessible for use. For some, this will be a diary. For many, it will be their phones. Capturing the ideas from your head is one thing, but what happens when you have too many of them? It gets to a point where things move from this to this. This affects our ability to retrieve the information we need and brings us back to square one. A system needs structure. Having things reflect the categories of your life will give your external brain the framework it needs to get started. This also puts you in a position to tackle the next thing, procrastination, an issue that has a natural way of being resolved. I would be unstoppable if I could just get started. Internet meme. Well then, let's unravel how to make your mind the unstoppable force it was always meant to be. Procrastination, evisceration. Getting something out of your head is not the same as getting it done. Just because we know what to do does not mean that we will do what we know. Whenever we procrastinate, we avoid action. But in order to take action, we must first of all know the next action. Knowing the next action is more than just knowing what's next on your list. It's knowing the immediate next action to take the second you move your body to get started. Let me explain. Procrastination is like an invisible force field between your mind and what it needs to do. To break down this force field, we must first of all break the task into actionable steps. When you do so, you will find that your task is made up of subtasks, all of which may connect to one central task. You will also find that some subtasks have subtasks of their own. Next, you find the order the tasks need to be accomplished in before lining them up in that order. This sequence of steps to be taken to accomplish your task becomes your workflow, but more on that later. To get this right, imagine you're writing instructions for someone to follow, and that someone is you. For example, don't just write book flights. This has no clarity of the next immediate action to take. A list made up of clear actions will look like this. Sit at my desk, open browser, search flights, pick dates, pay for flights, and so on. Trust me when I say this, you can never be too clear when it comes to clarifying the next action. This process eviscerates the procrastination barrier, which gets you started. And once you do get started, you become unstoppable. Unstoppable, that is, until procrastination returns with a vengeance. The next section will show you how to throw the book at procrastination should it ever return. And you'll do this by using your workflow. Is workflow a book? A workflow may help you sit down and get work done, but not all work can be finished in one sitting. So what happens when you leave work in progress? Well, what happens is the return of procrastination. But why? It's because you tried to figure out the last thing you were doing before you had to stop working. When you try to piece everything back together again, your brain sees this as work before the work you need to get done. The invisible barrier returns, and the anxiety alarm in your head goes off once again. If not everything you start can be finished in a single day, then what do you do about this? What you do is treat your workflow like a book. When you pick up a book to continue reading it, you know exactly where you left off. Not because you memorized the page, but rather it is because you bookmarked it. So what if you could bookmark your workflow as well, to pick up right where you left off? In practice, you don't need a literal bookmark. The point here is to use the clear instructions of your workflow to remind yourself of what you have done so far, the remaining things to do, and the tasks ahead. But again, I must repeat that you can only do this with a workflow made up of the clear instructions that you have given yourself. Clarity of the immediate next action is the very thing that eviscerates procrastination. The thing about peace in productivity is that the work doesn't need to be complete in order to experience peace of mind. The anxiety alarm bell in your head will remain silent as long as your bookmark can remind you of the immediate next action. This way, you can have many projects in progress at different stages of completion, all the while experiencing peace of mind. Now that we can start and stop our work without procrastinating, the question is, where do we find the time to do all the things we want to do? The secret lies in knowing the difference between two separate things that many people make the mistake of thinking are the same thing. A calendar is not a to-do list. When we're not writing things on our hand, we either put them on our calendar or our to-do list. This is only wrong when we treat both of them as the same thing. So what's the difference? Although both have things to do on them, what makes the calendar different is that you do more than just write in it. What you really do is schedule. Anything scheduled is what needs to be done on a specific day at a specific time. For example, you may schedule flights, appointments, and meetings, but you don't schedule doing the dishes. That goes on your to-do list. This is where the secret of creatively finding the time to do what you want comes into play. Putting your regular routine into your calendar gives you a bird's eye view of where your time goes. When you do this, the pattern of your week-to-week life emerges. Seeing this will give you a whole new perspective on your life. You'll find things you spend time doing that don't serve you, and slowly but surely, the possibilities of freeing up time will be revealed. And before you know it, you'll get excited by what you can do with all the time you have found. But wait, your calendar can actually join forces with your to-do list, especially when what's on your to-do list is put into context. And by context, I mean space and time. Space, time, and context. The reason why our subconscious makes everything urgent is because it fails to put things in the right context of space and time. It only knows the here and now, but our system, on the other hand, will not only know better, but also do better. We typically have a list that looks like this. The items end up being listed without any context, the where and when in space and time. First, let's talk about context in space, the where. This could be home, work, the shop, a phone call, your computer, or just taking your dog out for a walk. The where could also be a who, like an important person you don't see very often. Making these part of your list gives each item context on where to engage them. And now for time, the when. Your calendar gives the context of time, and once again, it is through scheduling that you will creatively find the pockets of time that you need. The items on your list should then be marked as scheduled to indicate that they are on your calendar. But remember, your calendar is not your to-do list, so anything that can be done on any day at any time should stay off your calendar, but should also remain on your to-do list. The line at the bottom represents the workflow of everything on your list. Each item will get checked off as you make progress. And now it's time for the most important thing, and that is replacing the anxiety alarm in your head with a reminder from your system. This will likely be a notification on your phone or your computer. It could also be as simple as a sticker on your fridge. Anything that would remind you right when you need to do what you need to do. As long as you can rely on your system to remind you, your subconscious mind will let go and you will be at peace. This combined with bookmarking your workflow will eviscerate procrastination should it ever return. So let's begin. You start with the first task by getting a reminder. The first task on your list is the same as your workflow. It's something to be done at home and isn't scheduled. You do it, cross it off the list, and it gets ticked on your workflow. But the next task is scheduled, which means you have to wait until the specific day and the specific time to get it done. So you then bookmark it on your workflow, and after days go by, you return to it and remember what to do. You follow your own clear instructions and do the next thing at work on the day scheduled to get it done. After that, the next thing on your list is also scheduled, so you talk to the person you need to talk to on the scheduled day. By following the same steps all over again, you go from reminder to task completion. The last task on the list is a scheduled phone call. So once again, you bookmark your workflow. Days go by and you get the phone call done as scheduled. Once the final task has been complete, it's mission accomplished. And soon you will find that the more you get done, the more you'll be motivated to get even more done. But here's a question. Do you have to get everything done? Knowing what to do is just as important as knowing what not to do. The question is, how do you tell the difference? To do or not to do? Have you ever tried highlighting the important parts of a book only to realize that you've highlighted everything? When you highlight everything, you effectively highlight nothing. The same goes for your life. Don't highlight every task as something you need to do. If you overcommit by trying to do everything, you will effectively do nothing. To do or not to do? That may be the question, but what is the answer? This brings us to the 3 Ds of doing. Defer, delegate, delete. But how will you tell which one of the 3 Ds rightfully applies? How will you tell right from wrong? If it's the wrong time for the right thing, then defer it and do it later. If you are the wrong person for the right thing, then delegate and someone else will do it. And if it's the wrong thing, period, then delete it. Reviewing your list of things to do on a regular basis will help you decide what to do as things in your life change and you adapt to those changes. This will keep your system running well, and when your system runs well, your mind will stop running wild And when your mind stops running wild, you will sleep like a baby. And now it's time for me to give you a present. Being present. Being present means focusing on the here and now without urgency. When the anxiety alarm goes off, urgency takes away our ability to be present. So our minds end up being at work when we are at home and end up being at home when we are at work. Having a forethought system as an external brain will keep you present no matter where you are, and the people you love will accept your presence as a special gift from you. So go forth and be productive in peace, but don't forget to have a few quiet days as well. Days when all alarms are switched